My name is Riley Lee Wilson, and I'm from a small town on the outskirts of Longreach, Queensland, Australia. In Australia, there's a saying we have here in the Outback, and that's F around and find out. This is the story I'm about to tell, my F around and find out tale. Little did I know, this little lad's getaway before I joined the military would be the last wild escapade that Benny, Max and I would ever spend together as a unit. What started as a carefree Aussie road trip morphed into a nightmarish plunge into the heart of darkness. So, settle in, because this tale's gonna grip you. Stay till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to Mr Novella if you're listening on YouTube, or follow Mr Novella if you're listening on Spotify for more chilling tales. Before joining the Royal Australian Air Force, I was determined to squeeze in one last epic adventure with my mates. So, me, Max and Benny set off on a road trip deep into the heart of the Australian outback. We were young, free and full of teenage bravado, ready to make memories that would last a lifetime. I had just graduated high school and my friends and I were buzzing with excitement. "Riley, mate, you're really going to leave us for the Air Force?" Max asked, his shaggy hair dancing in the wind as we drove through the rugged terrain. I glanced over at Max, his grin never leaving his face. "Yeah, mate," I replied. "It's a big step, but it's what I've always wanted. Besides, it's not like we'll never see each other again." Benny, sitting in the back seat, chimed in. "Yeah, it's just basic training, right? You'll be back before we know it, and then you'll be flying those fancy jets." We continued along the dusty road, the landscape stretching out endlessly before us. The outback was a harsh and beautiful mistress, with its endless red sands, ancient rock formations, and wildlife that could survive in the most unforgiving conditions. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and purple, we pulled into a small town, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. A rusted sign proclaimed it as Quartz Ridge, a place I'd never heard of before. "Seems like a good spot to rest for the night," I suggested, eager to explore a place off the beaten path. We parked near a rundown pub and headed inside, the smell of fried food and stale beer greeting us. The locals eyed us warily, but we were used to that. A few drinks and a game of pool later, we struck up a conversation with a grizzled old man at the bar. His weathered face held the stories of a lifetime in the outback, and he seemed eager to share them. "Be careful out here, you young uns," he warned, his voice filled with a sense of foreboding. "This place ain't like it used to be, not since the mines shut down. Folks have seen things in these parts, strange things." We laughed off his tales as nothing more than the ramblings of a drunk old-timer. Little did we know, his words were about to take on a chilling reality. As the night deepened and the stars lit up the vast outback sky, we decided to camp out by a dried-up creek bed. A campfire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the rocky ground. "This is it, guys," I said, toasting my friends with a beer. "One last adventure before the real deal. Here's to unforgettable memories." Little did we know that the outback held far more in store for us than we could have ever imagined. We had a blast exploring Quartz Ridge, but I was itching for some real outback adventure. The grizzled old-timers' tales of the strange happenings in the area had intrigued me, and I thought it'd be fun to rent some dirt bikes and head out to the nearby rivers. I found a rundown rental shop in the village and managed to secure 3 dirt bikes. Benny and Max were on board immediately, their faces lit up with excitement. "Mate, this is gonna be epic," Max exclaimed as we revved up the bikes, our engines roaring to life. I realised that I had made a major mistake, though. I hadn't told the local guides exactly where we were heading. See, in the Australian outback, the golden rule was to always let someone know where you're going. But we were city kids, full of adrenaline and the belief that nothing could go wrong. That overconfidence would soon come back to haunt us. We tore through the rugged terrain, the dry earth kicking up in our wake. The sun blazed overhead, and the three of us were loving every moment of it. It was like a scene out of one of those adventure movies. As we navigated through the rough, untamed landscape, Benny spotted a little river off in the distance. "Hey guys, that looks perfect for a swim," he shouted over the engine's roar. The temptation was too much to resist. The shimmering water looked so inviting, and the outback heat was unbearable. We made a spur-of-the-moment decision and veered off the road towards the river. It seemed like a fantastic idea at the time, a chance to cool down before heading back to our Airbnb. But as we got closer, I noticed something unusual. The water wasn't the usual blue or green you'd expect from a river. It was an eerie, inky black, and a chill ran down my spine. I should have remembered what the old-timer at the pub had said about Blackwater. Everyone in the outback knows that Blackwater means danger, that there's probably deadly predators lurking in its depths. However, we were too caught up in the thrill of the moment, too ignorant of the outback's secrets. Without hesitation, we parked our bikes on the riverbank and stripped down to our swim trunks. The water felt strangely cool and inviting as we waded in, oblivious to the hidden dangers. As we swam and laughed, little did we know that we had sealed our fate. The moment we entered that Blackwater river, our carefree adventure would take a dark and twisted turn, and we would soon find ourselves face to face with the ominous secrets of the Australian outback. The river had seemed so enticing, a welcome relief from the outback heat, but now it was a relentless force determined to rip us apart. The current was strong, stronger than we had anticipated, but our youthful arrogance led us to believe we could handle it. We were confident swimmers, after all. Benny was the first to attempt to swim to the other side of the river. As he reached the middle, the current beneath the surface grabbed him like a vengeful demon. Panic flashed across his face as he was swept away, shouting for help. Without thinking, Max leaped in after him, trying to reach him, but the powerful undercurrent was like a ravenous beast, pulling them both farther from me. I grabbed a long, sturdy branch and jumped into the churning water, the terror in my heart building with each passing second. All three of us were now at the mercy of the river, barely able to keep our heads above water. We clung to the branch, our fingers white-knuckled, our eyes wide with fear. Our plan was simple: stick together and go with the current, hoping that we would eventually reach a bend or a tree root to grab onto and make it out of the river. But as we continued down the relentless flow, I realized that the outback had other plans for us. Suddenly, Max disappeared beneath the water's surface. He was just there one moment, and then he was gone. As if the river had swallowed him whole, panic surged through my veins as Benny and I desperately scanned the water for any sign of our friend. His absence was a chilling reminder of the river's power. "Max!" Benny shouted, his voice trembling with fear. "Max, where are you?" We thrashed in the unforgiving current, gasping for air, our limbs growing heavy. The water seemed to stretch out endlessly, an unrelenting abyss that held us captive. Desperation clawed at my chest as I struggled to keep my head above water. We had no choice but to keep fighting, to keep searching for Max, even as the river continued to pull us downstream. Our once carefree adventure had turned into a nightmarish fight for survival, and we were only beginning to grasp the terrifying reality of our situation. The terror reached its peak as I watched Max reappear, but he was no longer with us. He was inside the gaping, toothy maw of a fully grown Blackwater crocodile. His eyes locked onto mine, wide with terror, and then he and the monstrous reptile vanished under the murky water, swallowed whole. I wanted to scream, to mourn my friend, but there was no time. The river was unforgiving, and Benny and I had to shift into survival mode. We swam as hard and fast as we could, the memory of Max's face etched in our minds, spurring us on. The relentless waves created by the beastly crocodile gave chase behind us, and the fear was a constant, suffocating weight. Our hearts pounded as we desperately fought the current, every stroke taking us closer to exhaustion. The river seemed endless, the outback secrets closing in on us. Just when we thought we couldn't go on any longer, we spotted a partly submerged tree in the middle of the river, a lifeline in our desperate situation. "We have to make it to that tree," I shouted to Benny over the deafening rush of the water. He nodded, his eyes reflecting the same fear and determination that gripped me. With every ounce of strength left in our tired bodies, we swam toward the tree. The crocodile, the beast that had claimed Max, was still behind us, snapping at our heels. It was relentless, and I could feel its cold, predatory presence lurking beneath the surface. The fear was like a physical weight on my chest, and the realization that we were now alone in this nightmare hit me like a sledgehammer. We reached the tree just in the nick of time, pulling ourselves up onto its gnarled branches. The crocodile snapped at our heels, its jaws clamping down on the tree's bark. We were safe for the moment, but we knew that the beast was not giving up. We huddled together on that partially submerged tree, our clothes drenched and our bodies trembling from the cold. Desperation and fear painted our faces as the realization sank in. We were stuck in the middle of a raging river with no food, no phone, and nightfall approaching. Nobody knew where we were, and we were stranded in the heart of the outback. Tears welled up in our eyes as we mourned the loss of our best friend, but we had no time to grieve. Survival was the only thing that mattered now. The outback had turned from an adventure into a living nightmare, and our fight for survival had only just begun. As I clung to that tree in the middle of the raging river, my thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions. The day had started off so perfectly, a carefree adventure with my best friends, full of excitement and youthful confidence. Now I was drowning in guilt for bringing Benny and Max into this dangerous situation. The weight of responsibility for our predicament pressed down on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was my fault, my selfish desire for adventure that had led us here. We weren't sure if any of us were going to make it out of this alive, and the fear of the unknown, the darkness that awaited us as nightfall approached, was suffocating. The outback had a way of turning beauty into terror, and I had to live with the consequences of my decisions. Nightfall descended upon us, and with it came a bone-chilling cold that gnawed at our drenched bodies. The temperature continued to drop, and we were now suffering the early symptoms of hypothermia. Our teeth chattered uncontrollably, and our bodies shivered involuntarily. My fingers were numb, making it nearly impossible to hold onto the branch that had become our lifeline. The desperation was overwhelming, but there was no escape from the frigid grip of the outback night. With trembling hands, Benny and I decided to check if the crocodile was still lurking below. We tossed a small branch into the water, and the moment it made contact, chaos erupted. There was a frenzied splashing, an angry commotion in the blackness. The beast was there, waiting, and our hearts sank as we realized it was as hungry as ever. But that wasn't the worst part. Out here, far from any city or source of light, it was pitch black. We couldn't see a thing, and the silence was deafening. The night was a shroud of darkness, and it felt like we were suspended in a void of despair. Our fatigue was relentless, and staying awake in these dire conditions was a struggle. We had to keep each other alert to ensure that we didn't succumb to the exhaustion that threatened to pull us under. Falling asleep would be our death sentence, a plunge into the gaping maw of the crocodile below. We clung to the tree, wet, cold, and miserable, each second feeling like an eternity in the abyss of the outback night. The unseen danger below, the numbing cold, and the relentless battle to stay awake combined to create a torment that I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. The night was long, and we had no idea if we would see the light of dawn. Morning came, and we were both relieved and apprehensive. We had made it through the night, shivering, exhausted, and emotionally drained. But the situation was far from ideal. We knew it might still take some time for anyone to realize we were missing, given our blunder of not sharing our route with anyone. The bikes we had rented were supposed to be back early that morning, but when they didn't return, we had a sliver of hope that something had gone wrong and they'd send help. With the new daylight, we decided to take turns resting in shifts, preserving our energy while we had some visibility. Despite the dire circumstances, Benny and I were in high spirits, offering each other small glimmers of hope. It was the rain that was an unexpected blessing. We used leaves and anything we could find to collect rainwater, and those precious sips of water gave us a much-needed boost in morale. But the crocodile below was an ever-present threat, and we never let our guard down. We continued to toss bits of branch into the water to check its location. At first, the beast would respond with a commotion, but then something changed. It was as if it understood our tactics, and it stopped making a fuss. Instead, it would rise just enough to expose its eyes, a chilling reminder that it was watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. As the sun began to set once again, we had a grim conversation. We knew that if we spent another night in that tree in our weakened state, our chances of survival were slim. Tomorrow, before nightfall, if we weren't rescued, our best option would be to split up and swim in opposite directions to the riverbanks on either side. We understood that one of us might not make it, but it was a gamble we were willing to take. Emotionally and physically drained, we settled in for one more miserable, wet night. The cold and hunger gnawed at us, and we clung to each other for warmth and support. The darkness was our silent tormentor, and we were well aware that each passing moment brought us closer to the crucial decision we would have to make if rescue didn't come soon. As the second night in that accursed tree unfolded, Benny and I felt the weight of hopelessness pressing down on us like a suffocating darkness. The cold rain continued to drench us, and our stomachs growled in protest against the emptiness within. The crocodile lurking below, its eyes glinting in the moonlight, seemed more patient than ever, as if it knew we were trapped in our own personal purgatory. "We can't wait any longer, Riley," Benny whispered, his voice a strained murmur in the oppressive night. "I don't think anyone's coming for us. We've got to do something." I nodded, the reality of our situation sinking in. The chances of rescue seemed slimmer with each passing hour. It was like the world had forgotten us, left us to face the impending doom that lurked below. We huddled together for warmth, the cold seeping through our wet clothes, making the desperation in our hearts more palpable. "I hate to say it, Benny," I began, my words measured, "but if help doesn't come by tomorrow, we have to take matters into our own hands. We can't survive another night like this." Benny's eyes met mine, a mix of fear and determination reflected in them. "You're right, Riley. We can't just sit here and wait to become that monster's next meal. We've got to make a break for it." The plan was desperate, a last-ditch effort born from the realization that our survival depended on our own actions. Tomorrow, if the rescue we prayed for didn't materialize, we would jump from the tree and swim in opposite directions with all the strength we had left. It was a painful truth we accepted. One of us might not make it, but at least it was a chance for someone to survive. The darkness around us seemed to grow thicker as we made our grim decision. We pledged to wait one more day, endure one more agonizing night, and then take our leap into the unknown. We would wait until the black veil of night covered our movements, shrouding our escape in darkness. The hours crawled by, the sounds of the river and the distant crocodile's occasional movements haunting our every breath. Each tick of the clock was a reminder of the approaching moment of truth. We braced ourselves for what lay ahead, knowing that tomorrow might be the day we either conquered the beast or became another tragic tale swallowed by the merciless outback. Morning came with a deceptive tranquility that masked the storm brewing on the horizon. The rain, an unexpected adversary, began to pour, elevating the water levels and transforming the river into a restless torrent. Our refuge in the tree was no longer secure, and the lurking menace beneath the surface seemed to grow bolder with the rising tide. As the day wore on, the rain intensified, and our desperation deepened. The once dry tree trunk now bobbed perilously in the swelling waters, and the menacing presence below was uncomfortably close. We clung to the hope that rescue was on its way, but time slipped through our fingers like the slippery raindrops. As the sun descended towards the horizon, casting long shadows over the water, Benny and I exchanged a somber look. The unspoken understanding passed between us. If help didn't arrive soon, our daring escape plan would become a necessity. The encroaching darkness could either be our savior or our captor. With the first hints of twilight, our anxiety reached its peak. The realization hung heavy in the air. We were running out of time. The opportunity for escape narrowed with each passing moment. In the distance, however, a glimmer of hope appeared. Torches cut through the dark, and our cries for help pierced the relentless rain. "Help! Down here! We're up a tree!" Benny's voice echoed through the downpour. The rescue workers saw our desperate situation and rushed towards us, their torchlights battling against the storm. But as they approached, the cruel truth unfolded. The water, now a turbulent force, separated us from our would-be saviors. The realization struck like a cruel blow. Rescue was close, but safety remained agonizingly out of reach. "Stay where you are. We'll find a way," one of the rescuers shouted, his voice carrying over the roaring river. Our hearts sank as we clung to the swaying branches, vulnerable to both the relentless rain and the looming predator below. The flickering torches in the distance were a lifeline, but the distance that separated us from safety seemed insurmountable. As darkness swallowed the landscape, we were left teetering on the edge, found but not yet saved, our fate hanging in the balance. The wait for rescue felt like an eternity. The rescuers, realizing a boat wouldn't make it in time, called in a helicopter. As we clung to the tree, the rain suddenly ceased, leaving a momentary calm in the air. For the first time since our ordeal began, a fleeting sense of serenity washed over me. The water below, once a tumultuous torrent, now lay still, reflecting the fading light. In that brief respite, the rescuers seized the opportunity. The biggest stone within arm's reach was hurled at the base of the tree, a desperate attempt to scare away the lurking menace beneath. But the beast remained undeterred, its eyes fixed on us like a predator zeroing in on its prey. Stones continued to rain down, creating ripples in the water, but the crocodile's focus remained unbroken. It was as if it knew time was running out, that its chance to claim us was slipping away, and it clung to its pursuit with unwavering determination. Minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity, the anticipation thick in the air. The chopper's distant hum grew louder, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. But as it descended, the sheer force of its propellers created a violent downdraft. Benny and I clung desperately to the tree as if our lives depended on it, because they did. "Abort the extraction! We're going to lose them!" one of the rescuers shouted into the radio. The helicopter pulled away, leaving us stranded in the tree once more. The sense of despair was palpable. The beast below, disturbed by the commotion, only seemed more determined, its eyes reflecting the red glow of the helicopter's fading lights. In the aftermath of the failed attempt, the rescuers and Benny exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the dire predicament we were in. The crocodile, undeterred by the stones or the approaching helicopter, remained a looming threat below. As the helicopter's distant hum faded into the night, we were left suspended between the gnashing jaws of the beast and the uncertainty of our next move. The Outback had tested us at every turn, and the question that lingered in the air was whether we could withstand its final, relentless trial. Time crawled by, each moment weighed down by the lingering threat below. Benny's keen eyes caught a subtle change in the water, a ripple that hinted at the crocodile's departure. Hope flickered in his gaze as he nudged me, pointing down into the now eerily calm river. Without hesitation, I grabbed a branch, tossed it into the water, and held my breath. The surface remained undisturbed, no monstrous commotion marking the return of the relentless beast. It was as if the Outback had finally released its grip on us. Benny, acting on pure instinct, started climbing down the tree. Panic surged within me. "Wait, Benny, we don't know if it's really gone." But Benny, fueled by a mix of desperation and newfound hope, didn't listen. He leapt into the water below, a gasp caught in my throat, and without second guessing I followed him, the cold water swallowing us whole. The moment we hit the water, the rescue team sprang into action. They threw ropes into the river, and strong hands pulled us from the clutches of the Outback's final trial. The adrenaline-fueled chaos felt like a whirlwind, the distant lights of the chopper overhead casting an otherworldly glow. As we were pulled onto solid ground, the reality of our survival began to set in. Shivering and soaked, we were whisked away to the safety of an ambulance waiting nearby. The adrenaline that had fueled us through the ordeal began to wane, leaving us with the crushing weight of our loss. In the back of the ambulance, the warmth of the blankets offered little solace. The reality of Max's absence, the void left by his laughter and camaraderie, sank in. The Outback had claimed its toll, leaving us scarred and changed forever. As the ambulance sped away from the nightmare that had unfolded by the riverbank, the distant howl of the wind seemed to carry Max's name, a haunting reminder of the friend we had lost to the unforgiving depths of the Australian Outback. In the aftermath of that night, the relentless search for Max and the monstrous crocodile proved futile. The combined efforts of the police and local wildlife experts scoured the unforgiving Outback for weeks, but the shadows of both Max and the elusive predator remained swallowed by the vastness of the Australian wilderness. However, in the days leading up to the attack, locals had sounded an ominous warning. Reports trickled in of a gargantuan crocodile wreaking havoc on the outskirts, attacking small pets and livestock along the riverways. The sheer size of the creature, larger than any known in the area, hinted at its origin, a distant territory further up the complex web of river systems. The revelation sent a chill down the spines of the community. It wasn't just a rogue reptile, it was an intruder from the wild heart of the Outback, a creature whose monstrous proportions spoke of untold dangers lurking in the remote corners of the land. The mystery deepened, leaving behind a trail of questions with no answers. The Outback, notorious for guarding its secrets, had claimed Max and the monstrous interloper, leaving nothing but echoes of their fleeting presence. As the investigation closed with no resolution, the scars of that night continued to haunt the community. The gaping hole left by Max's absence lingered like a ghost in the hearts of those who knew him. The unforgiving landscape, a silent witness to the tragedy, held its secrets close, leaving the community grappling with the weight of the unknown. Time passed, and life rolled on its relentless course. I managed to find my way to RAF Wagga in New South Wales, pushing through the grueling challenges of basic training. Graduation day came, and I earned my wings as a trainee pilot. The roar of jet engines and the vast skies above became my new reality, a stark contrast to the haunting memories of that fateful night. Benny, however, took a different route. He crossed the seas, setting his sights on the bustling streets of London, delving into the intricate world of law. We stayed in touch, exchanging messages and occasional calls, but something had shifted. The laughter and camaraderie we once shared had dulled, replaced by an unspoken tension lingering between us. Despite our efforts to bridge the gap, the friendship we once knew began to fray. It was evident in the pauses, the unsaid words hanging in the air. The trauma of that night, the weight of the guilt I carried, acted as a silent wedge, driving us apart. As the years went by, the distance between us grew, both geographically and emotionally. We were two souls, navigating different paths, the echoes of the OUTBACK's trial still reverberating in the background. The bonds that once held us together strained, weakened by the weight of unspoken regrets. The guilt, a relentless companion, lingered. Every success, every milestone carried the invisible weight of what we had lost. It was a burden I couldn't shake, a constant reminder of the price paid in the unforgiving heart of the Australian wilderness. Our friendship became a tale of what was, a narrative written in the quiet spaces between our conversations. And as life's currents continued to pull us in separate directions, I couldn't help but wonder if the OUTBACK had taken more from us than we realised. If there's one thing I've learned from the twisted turns of the OUTBACK, it's to never underestimate the wild. Out there, it's a realm where the line between adventure and danger blurs, and where a simple mistake can rewrite your fate. So, if you ever find yourself chasing the call of the untamed, remember this: respect the land. It's more than just dirt and trees, it's a living, breathing force. Tell someone where you're headed. Share your plans with a mate, a ranger, or someone who knows the lay of the land. The OUTBACK doesn't play favourites. It doesn't care if you're a seasoned explorer or a novice adventurer. Water is a lifeline, not just a refreshing gulp. Check your gear and then check it again. Be vigilant, stay aware, and don't let the thrill cloud your judgment. And if the landscape starts whispering warnings, listen. Every step into the wild is a dance with the unknown. It can be exhilarating, awe-inspiring, but it demands respect. Because trust me, you don't want to end up like we did, caught in the merciless grip of the OUTBACK's secrets. Learn from our story, from the echoes of that night. Embrace the thrill, but let it walk hand in hand with caution. The OUTBACK might seem silent, but it has a language of its own. Pay attention, tread lightly, and come back with tales, not tragedies. Outro, don't forget to follow Mr Novella on YouTube and Spotify for more thrilling stories. And when in Australia, steer clear of Blackwater.